The pretense of this conversation was what I didn't learn in art school about business. Pretty much everything. Art school didn't teach me the things that I was doing were unique, and it didn't teach me that the things that I was producing were a luxury item. And had I known that there was a luxury item, I would have changed the way I spun things. I'm Michael Joy. This is Absolute Joy. It didn't always feel like absolute joy. The pretense of this conversation was what I didn't learn in art school about business. Pretty much everything was not learned in art school about business. And I think that I could get harsh on the comments about that. But really, I don't know that I was open to learn about too much about business. I think I was focused on the craft or the trade or actually making something, what they call technician-based. What I had wished I had learned in art school, and I didn't wish this in art school, it was afterwards, that I had learned how to value my time. I had learned the value of my particular skill set, and I had learned the word negotiation and what that meant. And for me, it wasn't until much later that I started reading books on negotiation. The quick takeaway, I could talk about 1,000 different examples of negotiation. The one thing, and all the books that I read about it that stood out, was not how to negotiate, but simply to recognize when the negotiation had begun. And that was often well in advance that I thought it had. The other person was 6 steps ahead of me in chess already, not from a malicious standpoint, just in the sense of where they were headed and what they wanted from the deal. And when I started reading about negotiations, I was just like, oh, this is mind-opening. And then I thought, well, how am I possibly going to remember all this? All these case examples of, they say, oh, your distributor calls you and said they had a warehouse fire and there's going to be delays in the shipment. You tell them you had a fire too, and geez, I'm sorry to hear that, but we have our own problems here, and what are you going to do to fix this? Never let somebody get ahead of you with their downside story. That buys no credibility in negotiation. It's like, oh, too bad for you. Sorry about that, but let's keep going forward. And so I thought, how am I going to remember these things? And what it was is that over time, gradually, these negotiation sort of tactics, is the aggressive way of saying it, began to sink in, and I would have a conversation and I would hear somebody say, not we had a fire, but some sort of BS excuse. And I'm like, oh, ding, 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 ding. That was page 76 on this. He's telling me why he can't do something. I'm going to tell him why I can't do something also. Oh, he's saying that that's not valued. Oh, I'm going to say why it's not valued. Or the opposite, fight fire with fire, smoke with smoke. And these were not aggressive negotiations. That's a whole nother type of thing. These were just gentle recognitions of someone trying to position themselves. And then I realized that I was being positioned. And as a young kid, my position was I wanted every job, whether it was going to make a lot of money or not a lot of money. And then once I got the job, I always wished that I had charged more money because I underbid consistently on everything. At that time, I was only looking for, can I pay my rent this month? Will I have enough for food? I wasn't looking at business development. I was looking at just, can I survive this next month? And oh man, that job is $800, $500 in rent. I got $300, I'm set. That's what it was, small win to small win, and it was not a good strategy. So I didn't learn that in art school either, is how to figure out actually what my overhead was. And when I went back to the Art Institute to teach as an adjunct professor, which is a fancy way of saying I went back and taught a class when no one else could, I specifically worked with the students there and saying, here's how you figure out your overhead. Here's how to determine your bare minimum of what you can charge. And if your bare minimum is a lot of money, then you got to look at your competition. Because if your overhead is X thousands a month and you're just expecting, because that's your overhead, someone's going to come in and satisfy you on that. No, you have to either lower your overhead or be competitive or find out some other sort of efficiency. I could talk a lot about how to establish your overhead. This would be a talk more for students than professional business people, because it's kind of a different level of discussion. Let me get back to the topic. What else art school didn't teach me? Art school didn't teach me the things that I was doing were unique, and it didn't teach me that the things that I was producing were a luxury item. And had I known that there was a luxury item, I would have changed the way I spun things. As a mold maker, it didn't feel like a luxury item because I was providing a service and a solution. I thought it was pretty straightforward. I need a chair to sit on. Oh, what do you do with that chair? You sit on that chair. Okay, I can make you something to sit on. But if it was a painting, it's a little more esoteric in its the importance of it. Do you need the painting? No. Do you want the painting? Sorry. I was always leveraging an hourly in the mold world, and I never charged for what the solution was bringing. And had I been charging what the solution was bringing, I realized I would have done 4 times as good and the customer wouldn't have been mad, because if they have a $10,000 problem and I solve it for $5,000, but hourly I only needed $500, I could have charged $5,000 and they're happy. I'm getting closer and closer to the camera, and they're happy because I still saved them $5,000 on the solution that they needed. So look at the solution that you're providing for that person if you're in the trades. This is why plumbers and electricians can come in and get a lot of money based on, oh, the toilet is backed up, I'm in an emergency. I think the integrity becomes another discussion where a tradesperson exploits that. I never exploited that. It just wouldn't have felt right for me. And other people exploit that vulnerability for the win, and I frankly think it's pretty shitty. But it's done all the time. I have vendors come to my house, to the building. It's like I have an x-ray machine. I'm like, seriously, do you think I own a building like this because you're the first person I've talked to? And I'm just having these things go through my mind. I'm like, you did not correctly evaluate. You misread the customer. This was something else they didn't teach in art school, is how to develop a relationship with a customer into a client. A customer is a one-off job, and you probably won't ever see them again. A client is somebody that you have a relationship with and you gain traction with, and that's gonna be a much more valuable interaction, because you don't have to reintroduce yourself. You don't have to go on all these first dates. You kind of just pick up and you start collaborating together and be like, I got this idea. I'm like, I can do this. They're like, I know you can do this. That's why I'm here. And it turns into something kind of great. And they already know your price point. I watched this Andy Warhol biography on Netflix, and there was this one piece out of whatever 6 episodes, and somebody was asking Andy how he established his price and how he got famous. And it was kind of I'll just say it was crappy, but here's what he said. He said, be around a bunch of rich people, one person you do a portrait for, and you set your price then. He said, I set it at $50,000 or $60,000, and he said, that's the price that stuck from there on, because they talked at their point. It's like, oh, you go get that for $50,000. So he had a lot of cojones to do that. But a similar thing happens in small businesses where if somebody says, I want you to give me a good price. So I say, okay, I'll give you a good price. Don't be a problem of a customer, and I can give you a good price. Then what happens is they go tell their friends, but they're proud that they got a good price. And now your good price becomes everybody's price. Someone calls you and they're looking for, to do a job. And then you got to say, yeah, that was a one-time deal. Well, that's what you gotta say. You say, no, that was a very special consideration. I'm sorry they didn't explain it to you correctly. The normal pricing is this, this, and this. And you better correct it from the beginning, or else you're gonna be working at a discount for the rest of your life. That timeline for me was I was discounted for a lot longer than I should have been. Now, the caveat is this is all based on custom work. It's not based on a product that I'm selling again and again and again. If I was making plates and I was selling lots of plates, it's like, oh, wholesaling, volume discount, and things like this. No, what I was doing was one plate for one specific person of one specific size. It's a one-off. It's a different type of activity. Custom versus manufacturing. The thing is I didn't start making money until I started manufacturing. And the reason is when I was doing custom, it involved me 100%, and I was dawn to dusk. I loved it, but I was really tired and I could only go to a certain capacity. But once I started making products, then I could bring other people in and train them, not to my level, but to the level of just enough to help me get those products out the door. Then it became repetitive and I saw more scalability of that. Art school left all that for my own discovery, and so I am not a big supporter of going to art school if you want to have a business. Don't expect them to help you with it. You can tell these are hot topics for me because I had to overcome the deficits from art school at great expense to myself. Now, I think that there was value in them, but it was the long game value. As far as expense, I struggled financially for years and years and years, and I think it created hardships and some significant stress in my life that led to big deals such as not having a family, such as not buying a home until I was 40. There's a price for going to art school, and I want to talk about that. We'll do that in the next episode.